finally got your first leadership gig, loving the new role, but feeling the pressure of your new responsibilities and all that expectation to perform? Well, don't worry, you're not alone. Crossing the chasm from a technical role to leadership, from doing stuff to managing and leading people, is the toughest challenge any leader must make. Welcome to the Human Edge Show, the podcast dedicated to help you do just that, successfully cross the doing to leading chasm. Campbell Such here, Chief Chasm Crossing Guide. I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. I want to help you learn those lessons much more easily by sharing my experiences and talking with brilliant people who have already figured it out. You'll get great actionable tips, strategies, and techniques to make the transition so much easier and faster for you. Now let's get to it. Welcome to another episode of the Human Edge Show. Today I'm privileged to have Nisha Clarke from Abano Healthcare on board. Nisha, welcome. It's fantastic to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Nisha Clarke is the CIO of Abano Healthcare at Abano Healthcare Group. She is an experienced leader within technology and believes that one size does not fit all, and hear to that. Nisha is focused on results and developing long-term relationships. She has an open and humanistic leadership style. Her approach is to build credibility with team members, peers, and customers through respect, integrity, and open, honest communication. Nisha is an adrenaline junkie. I wouldn't mind finding out a little bit more about what that means, who thrives on a challenge and has the drive, determination, and commitment to get the job done. She is deeply passionate about developing high-performing teams that have a focus on service excellence and exceeding customer expectations. And Nisha also has a strong commitment to work with youth, both secondary and university students, to encourage and enable them to fulfill careers in technology. And here to that as well, we need more people in technology. So that's fantastic, Nisha. Welcome to the show. To kick things off, what's one thing that not many people would know about you?
I guess it's the mask. I'm extremely introverted. So on the introversion scale, it used to sit just to the right, and now it's gone right to the end. So when I'm describing that to people, they're like, no, there's no way that you're an introvert, and it's a learned behavior. Like, I can honestly tell you, I'm sitting here sweating. I'm right outside of my comfort zone, but it's something that I've learned to do through time. I still get it wrong. I joke inappropriately. That's my recovery position. And so sometimes I've been standing up in front of my teams and I've said the worst jokes, and I just have to shake it off and keep going. I go into a job interview and I will be sweating. I'm that person when you go into a conference in the corner by the drinks table with the nibbles. I just physically can't go over and join a group of people having a conversation. So I always find a friend and wander around, and people are always surprised when I tell them that.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how many people misunderstand what introversion's all about? I'm an introvert too, and it's so easy when you go into a social situation to do I'm just going to pretend I'm on my phone rather than go and talk to someone. And yet I find recognizing that's what I'm like, and I push myself to go and do things, and I have some of the most amazing experiences, but at the end I then have to go and get some space to myself to just recharge, which is the definition of an introvert, right? You go alone to recharge. So
100%.
Yeah. And yet I love being on stage and speaking when it's something I feel comfortable and passionate about. And I prefer one-on-one conversations to big groups of people. So it's when I'm having a conversation. But the weird thing is being up on the stage, I used to be fearful of it, and now I really enjoy that, and being able to pass on some of the things that I've learned that might help others. So, and part of the reason why I do this, because I found I love talking to people, and having these one-on-one conversations is just awesome. So thank you for sharing that, Nisha. It's not something that it sounds like many people would know, and it's not something that many of us as introverts are comfortable to talk about. But to know that you are doesn't mean that you can't make a great leader. And in fact, there's no reason why introverts and extroverts can't all make great leaders. They're just different styles, right? So going back to or perhaps there's a couple of things first of all. So how have you found that being an introvert has impacted your challenge and growth and journey through leadership? How's that affected things, good or bad?
I think it's a conscious thing where you're you have to put yourself out there. It's not natural for me to say, look at me, I've done this, this, and this, or here's what I think. So even my profile around styles, I will just sit there and listen to people thrashing ideas around. So it's really hard to be noticed, because sometimes you get through positions or jobs or roles by, oh, you know what, Campbell's such a great guy, he always contributes. And if you're that person that's quiet, you don't naturally have that view from leadership or other people within the organisation. You've got the ideas and they're just sitting there busting to come out. So I've actually had to learn to be the person participating. And what's funny is, I have an example yesterday. I was on a call and I'm like, right, going to leave you guys to it, and everyone's chatting. And then I was like, I jumped in there and my own team looked at me and they were like, you couldn't hold back anymore. So I've completely changed where I can contribute. And they equally would tell me to shut up now. But it's something that you have to learn, and that I've had to consciously learn to do. Otherwise I would just sit there and be nodding and, oh no, I'm not going to say that in case I sound stupid or something like that. So that's been something for me that I've had to really grapple with and get over.
Yeah. And so as someone with aspirations for leadership who is introverted, and it is a scale, right? The way I see introversion to extroversion, because introversion is about needing to recharge by alone, and extroversion is around recharging by going and spending time with other people. And there's this curve in between, and most people sit somewhere in the middle. But how have you found that challenge with, in your early steps into leadership, in taking on a leadership role when you are introverted, because it's something that we can work around it and we can develop strategies for it, but that style, that piece of introversion probably still stays with us. And then someone must have spotted the potential in you. So just going back to your early days in leadership, what was the process through which you got into leadership, and what were some of the good things that you took out of it, and what were some of the challenges or maybe the missteps you took or the learnings you took that you might do differently?
Well, it was really crazy because of, being as old as I am. I was in telecom when they were implementing their first computer system. So they sent a whole lot of SMEs to Wellington, and what we were doing in Wellington was we were experts in our field. So the cable plant, the exchange information, the reticulation out in the field, and how were you going to represent that information into a computer system, because it was all in books. It was a cable book that was this big, that had the cable number and the pair number, and you'd write the telephone number in, and you'd do it green if it was active, blue if it was a reservation, and you had to translate all of that into a computer system. So lovely IBM were the partners, and we went down to Wellington. I read this manual, and I remember reading the section, and who became my very good friend Cliffy, we were like literals and constants, because I did electrical engineering. I didn't do anything with computers. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And so that was kind of amazing. And then probably there was about 20 of us all around the country that ended up in Wellington, and we were working with the BAs, developing the software, and then we'd test it. And just through doing that, just by nature of who I am, sometimes you just go, okay, right, let's all get together in the room. And we were agile back then. We got the stick-it notes up on the wall. We needed to do service order provisioning. How the heck were we going to implement that? So we wrote down the streams on the board, stuck them all up on the wall. And what I said previously about if you're just sitting there not contributing, sometimes that type of leadership gets missed out. So obviously, in a number of those sessions, the leaders from IBM and Telecom witnessed us being successful and my contribution to that. So when we came up to Auckland, because the first go live went, and then there was continual improvement, very agile in the 1990s. And they asked me to lead a team, which was not just Telecom people, but the IBM contractors, which scared the hell out of me. But I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And that's kind of where it started. It was very, very nerve-wracking and humbling to think that they'd asked me, because there was all my peers there, and I was just one of many. But I do recall those days where we were in rooms, and I was up there with the whiteboard, and so that was recognisable, I guess.
Yeah. So it sounds like you had a bit of you knew you needed to get something done, and you had a vision for how it might be being able to how you might be able to do it.
Yes.
And that pushed you perhaps past your natural reluctance to put yourself forward and step out because perhaps to you it was obvious. And rather than forcing yourself on people, it was just a natural thing for you to do. Did you have any sense of that at the time, or was that came in from the outside, the recognition of the leadership potential you had?
That did come out from the outside, because the thing to add to that was it was just so exciting. We were about to do something and that nobody else had been done. So that energy and the adrenaline made me not be the person who I was. So yes, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I think anyway, having children, by then I'd had 2 children, I think. So that leadership of being a mother is also there. I've had many Christmas cards from colleagues going, "We love your motherly nature," but that's a different point of view. But that kind of comes out as well. So that leadership thing. But yes, no, it was a bit of a surprise. It was a nice surprise.
Yeah. And to have people recognize that, and then having been put into that role, one of the biggest challenges that a lot of new leaders have is that they get put in and they get kind of left to sink or swim. Did you have people around you that had put you into those roles that kind of helped support you and encourage you, and that you could go to for help and advice around how to do things when things got sticky, or it wasn't kind of working out the way you thought it might be, or there was some conflict that you had to deal with? Did you have that help, or did you have to work all that out for yourself?
Yeah, I had a bit of both. I had the most awesome, he led the telecom team, Mike, and he was that guy, I remember him and I having the conversation. He goes, "No, Nisha, you can do it. I'm here to ask questions." And just having somebody face-to-face tell you that, you can do it, but he's also there. And there were a couple of times when I'd have to walk around and find him and go, "I'm not so sure about this situation." And he'd go, "Oh, it's fine." And you don't always have that. I've had the reverse in other roles where you're just, to be fair, scared to even ask a question. So you need to naturally find somebody else that you can bounce ideas off. So I was very, very lucky that I had that. Not always there. Sometimes I had to wing it, made some very interesting mistakes, but that's the thing. It was a trial and error, but having somebody to be able to just vent to or bounce an idea off, or just to be able to communicate your fears or a suggestion, was a really important aspect of helping me grow.
Yeah. Wow. That's and was that person a colleague or a peer, or were they the person you reported to?
He was, I reported to one manager, and he was another manager of that manager, if that makes sense. So he was leading a whole piece of the implementation. Right.
So was he at the same level as your manager, or was he at the level? But okay. So he didn't have any direct responsibility for you, but he saw the potential and saw the value that he could bring. Well, that's great. And that wasn't something you sought. It was something that was there, right? And that
absolutely was very lucky.
But perhaps something for new leaders to think about around finding someone like that. Often your direct manager may not be that person. It's great if it can be, and it's great if it is, but if it isn't, and if you're in a situation perhaps where it's the opposite, where you just can't go to talk to them, or you certainly feel that you can't for fear of being, I don't know, being a negative thing, then what would you suggest someone does? Have you been in that situation where you've then gone, "Gee, I need to find someone else"? And if you have, how have you handled that?
Yeah, I think it's about the theme of all the questions and discussions around leadership. It's finding somebody who you can trust, but it's okay to find a colleague to bounce ideas off. But what I did was, when I went and worked in another department at Telecom, and I had a quite different boss who I didn't feel as though I can communicate, I, by nature of meeting a lot of the leaders within the organisation, found somebody who I could communicate with and asked, would it be all right if we could catch up once a week or once a fortnight, just have a coffee and bounce some ideas on you? Finding that person, it can be tough, but it actually, I think you will know who that is, in an organisation. Most organisations are a little bit big, and there's always that one person, that one leader who you've seen, who you've gone, "Oh, he's a really good guy." And it's just building up the courage, because a really, really engaged leader will go, "Absolutely, I'm a little bit busy, but you book it in and I'll make sure that I'm there." So having the confidence that they're there to support you, because it does give you that other it gives you a bit of confidence and a sounding board, which is really important.
Yeah. And I think you made a really important point there. A really engaged leader will say yes. So leaders, I believe one of the big responsibilities for leaders is to develop other leaders. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you're not engaged. And perhaps from the point of view of you as a new leader, that you probably don't want to be dealing with that person anyway. So even if it is someone that you ask and they turn you down, maybe the right thing to take out of that is that's not the right person because they're not set up for me, or maybe there's something else going on. But keep looking, and it doesn't just have to be in your organization; it could be another organization, right? Yeah, but probably ideally someone at a level up or higher that has got a bit of a perspective that you might not otherwise have, and some experience that you might not have at a peer or colleague level.
Exactly.
Yeah. So looking back on that first step into leadership, Nisha, is there anything that you learnt that kind of stands out, or any epiphanies that you had at that point, either good or bad, that stand out that you go, wow, if I knew that when I'd started, it would have really helped me to either avoid something or to go faster in another direction? Yeah,
I think I think the epiphanies are really around, being a leader doesn't make you the boss. End of story. That boss mentality is something that I think is a personal thing to me, is very archaic. I did have a dabble at being the boss. I rang up one of my team members, who actually I was quite close to anyway, and said, "Why aren't you at work?" Because I'm at work and I know that you're sick, but I'm sick. So could you get to work, please? And she quickly hung up the phone on me, and then the next day told me what she thought. And then that was, you've got to figure out as a leader that you've got to understand what's behind the person, because, we all have facades. You don't know what's happening in a personal life of somebody. You don't know their health conditions. That's part of being a leader, is to uncover that. But I think it's that ability to get to know the people and understand truly what they're about is the thing for me. That's what I now learn, and that's part of who I am, having those conversations, not about it's about you as a person. Not everyone wants to divulge in that information, and that's fine, but trying to find that connection. And I think it's also that sense of you're a team. I used to get frustrated when anyone would say, "This is my boss," and I'd go, "I'm not your boss, I'm your team member. I just happen to be able to make some decisions and sign off some things that you can't," because somebody has to get into trouble if they, sign off the wrong thing. But that used to be my joke. So I think that's it for me, is that, you really do need to not think that you're a leader and you're a boss. You're actually a leader for helping a team become the best that they can at what they're doing. So that kind of, for me, telling people off, just no, don't do that. That's not what you should do. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? That's the kind of the command and control versus the responsibility, accountability, and the everything that goes with that. And if you're telling people what to do or having to make all the decisions, then all you've got is a line outside your desk, outside your office, with people waiting for you to make a decision, and that's not really what you want to do, is it? So, just, you mentioned before about, you made the comment about motherly, and how people had commented on motherly being a trait that you have that really helped them. Can you just talk a little bit about that and what that means, and how someone listening to this might take some of that aspect on board around how they develop as a leader? Sure. I think it's that connection that I just talked about. It's I had an example where we outsourced to EDS, and this is to try and help you understand the motherly aspect. And as we outsourced to EDS, as you would think, all the big players decided to throw their toys out, and IBM walked out the door. We had a specific technology that was really unique to New Zealand. So I did a bit of a search, and we found a guy in Australia who had the right skills, and it was like winning the lotto, I swear. And he jumped on a plane. He had a family. He had a son and a daughter, and his wife, and that man worked from, he did like 3 weeks without even having a Saturday or a Sunday off. He had a disabled daughter, and that was even harder. And I remember just sitting there thinking, oh, this is just not right. And, I'd say to him, please take some note. He's very professional, very focused. We were a team. I'd helped him get to New Zealand with all of the stuff that he needed for his daughter. So he had this thing that he had to do it for me. So I sent all of his wife and his children these separate little gift packages to say, thank you for letting me have your dad or your husband, and I'm so sorry. But that's been everything that I've done is recognizing when someone's making that extra effort to do something, or just hearing, did you know Campbell had a problem because I heard somebody talk about it. Do you think you should send him something? And people are like, oh yeah. So it's kind of, and then when we're talking, it's just tell me how it is. Don't need to flavor it up. Being perceptive. And I think that's what you get when you're a parent, and not everyone's going to be a parent as a leader, but think about how you were with your parents. Not everyone had good life, parenting skills, but it's just actually being and listening and being present. And I think that's the thing. And that caring aspect is what really helps you create a team.
Yeah. That's really, really interesting. It's a really common theme from a lot of really successful leaders, is that understanding people, understanding who they are as a person, and a real true caring for other people and looking out for the best for them will then help them work better as a team, and ultimately makes everything just work so much better. Because if they don't think you care, they'll be struggling to be motivated and engaged and all of that other stuff. So that's and what you're doing and what you do by doing that is you build a connection and show people that you care, and then that allows a whole lot of other things to come into play around motivation and direction and all of that other stuff. That's really powerful, really powerful. One of the big challenges that we've had recently over the last 18 months, 2 years with COVID, has been the need to work remotely and work in some people at the office and some people away, and the whole idea of hybrid. And I know it's a brand new area that a lot of leaders are struggling with. And when you come into a new leadership role, you've got a whole lot of stuff you need to learn to cope with people face to face. And now we're having to try and do a whole lot of stuff remotely. Is there anything that you've learned or found over the last 18 months or so since the whole COVID world has been going on that's helped you manage remotely and manage hybrid teams?
Yeah, I think there's one single rule which I started at the very beginning, which is having the camera on. The screen doesn't replace the face-to-face, but being able to see people is really, really important, because I can see how they're acting. I can't see all of them, but I can see a little twitch if that's what's happening. So that personal connection has to still be there. And I think that checking in, we learned quite quickly. We would do a check-in in the morning, not just about because it was crazy when we went into level 4 that first time. This was, unknown territory, but everyone needed to check in the morning, even if it was for half an hour, just to have a quick, what are you up to? How are you doing? And then off we'd go for the day. And then we found sometimes we'd need a check-in at the end of the day. And then as we got better at it, it would be a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And doing things, it's funny, some people and I've seen lots of things on LinkedIn and stuff where, you have drink sessions after work and Zoom meetings, and so it works for some people just don't like it, but it's giving the opportunity for that to happen. And little anecdotal suggestions like sending some biscuits out to people so that they got there, or, doing drop-offs. I did a drop-off. I had a team at Downer and it was Easter. So I, in my sanitized way, took Easter eggs. They came to the back of the car and they opened it up and they took it inside because I wasn't allowed in. It was only at level 4, so I had some must be in the office workers. So just those little gestures were really, really important, and keeping the communication open. But I think what underlying you had to do as a leader was just give trust. Just trust. Everyone's doing what they're meant to be doing. yes, if you had an inkling that somebody was taking what's another word? Taking
the Mickey.
The Mickey, that's the one. I was thinking of a different one. But you just had to trust, and you can get back that person by saying, oh, hey, how did your day go? Did you get this, and this done? And quite soon you build up that, but then giving them a break as well, because we're all having to work differently, cope with children being at home. Yesterday I had a great example where my daughter dropped off my grandson, and I had a CEO meeting with another CEO from another company, and he's running around my bedroom. I felt okay to go, I'm really sorry. And I had to go and pick him up and stick him on my knee. And that's becoming the normal, but a lot of leaders can't handle that right now. You can see the strain in their eyes, and it's just that trust aspect. Trying inside to give somebody complete trust, and you'll get it back tenfold, I believe anyway. That's my personal view. So those are the things that I kind of did to get through the whole craziness of what's going on at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess part of what you do as well is because you've worked out how each of the people in your team work. You can modify your connection with them accordingly, because some people like a one-on-one, other people like to get together with the whole team and get the buzz out of that, and a whole mix of those things.
Yes.
Right. The other thing too, one of the other things that's become really clear to me from a lot of the leaders that I talk to is that the stress levels for leaders have been going through the roof, and being remote and all of the pressures that are always there for leaders. On top of that, the whole having to manage remote teams and cope with all of this massive change and uncertainty that's going on. What have you done when you're feeling really stressed in your leadership role now, or feeling really under the pump? How do you cope? What do you do to relieve the stress and to get the help that you need when you need it in a way that helps you kind of cope and hopefully grow and develop and blossom in your role as a leader?
I think it goes back to the beginning. I've got different layers. So I've got a personal layer where I just go either out for a walk or a run, and, you kind of clear your head. And that, I think, is extremely important. Mental health and physical health is really, really important right now. So just keeping that mindful. It doesn't have to be a marathon or anything like that, but it's just keeping in mind that getting out of your desk, because I could sit here for 12 hours and barely move. Some days I think I needed a little potty under my seat, because that's the rolling meetings after meetings. Having a network. So there's a couple of leaders that I have that I do exactly what I said when I was learning, but they're at a level where I can just organise a catch up and go, holy cow, do you know this happened? This is happening, and get the calm saying, all it sometimes is you've got this, it's fine. Yes, you've done the right thing, or why don't you try this angle or something like that. So that's very, very important for me. And then I've got a group of people who I've worked with over the years, and we connected as a group. So we used to go and have like every 2 months a lunch. So now we do a session and it's just a venting session. The rule of that is there's no PC-ness needed. You can just say how you feel. And it's really good to be able to do that. And the last layer is my team, my leaders. We have what's called a circle of trust. So every now and then I've had to go below the line, and I've had to engage my leaders and go, we just need to have a chat. And this isn't about you. This is just about what's going on. It'd be like, holy cow, do you know this finance RFP? It's driving me up the wall, and I've got this, and this going on. And we just have a big chat about it. Never divulging anything that I shouldn't, but it's really nice to have your team around you, because they rally you as well. So equally you're there to support them. But every now and then it's great to know that they're there just to, somebody will go, oh, can I help out with that, Nisha? And I'm like, oh, would you? Oh, yeah, that'd be great. And it's really good to have that both way, I think, because then you don't feel like you're on an island.
That sounds awesome. Having the 4 layers and fully, that mental health, physical health piece, you just got to make yourself do it, right? The other 2 layers that you talked about with the group where you could vent, and also a number of people that you can check in with, that's not a natural thing for an introvert. And and yet the value of that you can see. So to anyone that's watching this or listening, that's something to really think about, is to look to how that might work for you to build those connections with those people, be really powerful. And then the circle of trust. Can you just talk to me a little bit more about that? Because I think that's an awesome thing, because it's one of the big things as a leader I've always seen is that you're but you're stopping the brown stuff from falling down onto the team below. So that's part of your role, getting stuff out of the way so they can get on and do it. But equally, for them to be able to see a little bit about the world that you live in and to be able to maybe provide some insight and some help, that sounds really powerful to me, and also a really good way to connect with your team. So was that a formal kind of a conversation that you had with your direct reports and the leaders in your team to say, hey, look, this is what I'd like to do, are you on board? Or did it just develop over time? What was your approach to that?
Developed over time. When I was at EDS, we went through a really, really stinker of a time. There was Telecom wanted to spend less money, and we were needing to reduce the workforce. So I'm talking not 10 people, I'm talking 40 people we had to take out of the workforce. And so that was me and my leaders getting up in front of 200 odd people to say, hey, we're going through this process. I've done it a million times. It's for the right reasons. It's still a horrible, horrible thing to have to do. And if you learned a little bit about me, that connection with people is always hard. So that one time I had to get my leaders in a room and I said, we need to build a circle of trust because I can't do this by myself. I physically need you guys to know what's there and what's happening and how I'm feeling. So then we can, it was like being Wonder Woman with a lasso and the bloody, so it was really, I needed those people because I need energy myself, but I couldn't do it anymore by myself. So from that time, it was great. We would have the presentations with the team. We'd go in and have a coffee at the coffee shop, and they're like, I didn't need to say anything. They go, you okay? What do we need to do? One day we all went out and got completely glassy-eyed because it was nice because that's how you form the team. So then from there, I used to have a team and I'd say, right, let's talk about the circle of trust. There's sometimes I'm going to tell you stuff that you don't necessarily know about, but if it leaves this room, then you break the trust and you're not back in the circle. One person's done that and it took him 3 years to get back in the circle. And every now I meet him, I go, and this is the example of a person who broke the circle of trust. No, but it has been something that I've continued, and they're not things that are, top secret. There are NDA projects and things that are going on that I would never share with the team, but there's things that are, as you said, there's a whole lot of stuff coming down from the top and you can only hold it up for so long. And I think that's been important for me. So it's something that I've learned. And if you talk to anyone that's worked with me, that'll be the thing they talk about is Nisha's circle of trust.
Yeah, I love it. It's really love the idea. It's a great idea. And for anyone that's watching or listening, something to perhaps take on as you move up through the leadership ranks to consider how you might form something like that with your teams, I guess. There's nothing wrong with the team too. It doesn't have to be a team of leaders. It could be a direct report team that are doing things. As you've moved up through the levels, one of the big challenges for leaders as they move up through an organization through the leadership levels is to lose touch with what's going on at the customer level, at the lower levels, if you like. What do you do to make sure that you stay in touch and have the best chance of getting a really strong sense of what's actually going on, as opposed to a filtered view through other people that might have other agendas?
Yeah, it's probably important for me. I'll give you an example in the role I've got now. We have people out in the practices. We have people in shared services. We're a shared service function from a technology perspective. I've got a person looking after service delivery. But what I try to do is full trust. I know that he's got it. He's got all of the escalations or, the projects that are going out into the practices. But I actually go and meet with the leaders of all the different areas, not to say, how's my team doing? Actually, I talk to them about what their business is doing and what they need from a technology perspective. What's been really cool at the moment is I'll talk to somebody and they're, oh, yeah, and Peter's doing a really good job of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, didn't ask for that bit of feedback, but that makes me feel really cool that I know that the team are taken care of. If I get a negative bit of feedback, I just hold on to it. I actually don't do anything with it, because that's the worst thing I could possibly do, is then go, oh, Campbell, John said that, blah, 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 blah. I just hold it and I leave it. And what I do is I find a question of a situation that I'll bring it in to say, hey, has anyone listened about that new device that we installed in that practice? How's it going? And generally I'll get the answer that, it was a rubbish piece of equipment and, we're working really hard on fixing it. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I lost track of what that thing is. So it's not a lie, but it's not to make people feel like they have to be on guard if I'm out there talking to the business or other stakeholders. It's actually just a touching point, never using it to whip the team as the command and control people would do, more just to make sure that if there's something that I need to pivot on, I can do that and quite easily.
Yeah. And also by doing that, you're not you know about it, and it might be a one-off. If it becomes a trend, then that's a whole different story, right? And by being able to dig into it and uncover it early, that's really powerful. And so that's your way of connecting in. That's really cool. Just to change gear a little bit, one of the things so we've talked a little bit about new leaders and the things that they can do and how you've managed as you've come through the leadership ranks and the things that you've learnt on the way. One of the big things that I see when I look out into the field is that a lot of new leaders get put into a role, and then it's a little bit of sink or swim, or sometimes a lot of sink or swim, and the stress and heartache and challenges around dealing with having been the best in your team about doing things, getting stuff done, and then having to move into a role where you're helping, where that's not what you do anymore. It's around helping other people, working with other people to get things done. As a leader of leaders, someone's put that person into that role. What would you say to someone who's just brought someone in from outside or promoted someone from a team into a new role? What would you say to them, or what advice would you give to them around how they could best support that new leader in that role to give them the best chance of succeeding and minimize their chances of massive stress and overwhelm and all the other things that can go along with ending up in a role where you're sinking or swimming?
Again, it'll be, for me anyway, I'm trying to think of an example, but I think for me it's learning and understanding what the person's capability is, but having that open door. So very, very first and foremost is sitting down to say, hey, look, I know that this is new for you. Here's some of my experiences, a bit of vulnerability from a leader to a leader, especially a new leader. That vulnerability of what you did badly is a really good example. I know you're putting yourself out there because everyone wants to seem like they're heroes, but giving some really good life lessons of, I did this, my story about telling somebody to get to work because she was sick. Don't do that. But just putting yourself out there, being vulnerable and having the open door. So for me, even the leaders that I've brought in that are all new, it's like, just ring me. I'm always available, but providing focused hour sessions on to not about the work, but how are you going? So what are some areas of improvement? What are some areas that you think that you need further development? Can I get you some training? I have a plethora of LinkedIn courses that are pretty easy for people to access that are thinking, EQ stuff, so people can learn that leadership is not just about getting tasks done, but it's about all of that connecting, which is not natural for a techie person to move straight into a leadership role and, have to actually want to have a conversation with you. It's like, really? Can't I just talk about the network diagram? So I think that's really, really important, and actually having a development plan for that leader. It sounds weird that you would have a leadership development plan, but you do need to have one. Are you okay with doing one-on-ones and performance assessments, and do you know what they are? And don't worry about the work stuff, because that person used to do the work stuff, so they will keep it in line. But it's all of the leadership stuff. What about when you have to have a courageous conversation with somebody who's not doing what they do? Would you like me to do one with you? Offering that up. So as a leader, your job is to be there 100% for that new person, to be able to help them navigate the softer side of being a leader and then how do you bring in the trust thing. I know you want to go and do the network design for that thing, but you've got an architect that does that, so let him do it. Don't pick it to pieces. Ask him questions. So that's really, really important, I think, as a leader of leaders, is trying to be there and be present and help them in every aspect.
Yeah, that's really powerful. One of the biggest challenges when you're moving out of a technical role where you are in the team to leading the team is that it's so hard to hand something off and then to actually let go of it and trust someone else to get on with it, and not taking it back's a sign. Not taking it back's a key. It's almost like a key measure, isn't it?
Yeah.
Help someone to finish it and solve it rather than I'll do that for you. That's the worst thing, and then you can multiply yourself. And I really like your approach to, even though you didn't use the word, I kind of see it as surfacing the idea that leadership is a skill and it's actually something you can learn. And just because you've been appointed a leader doesn't mean suddenly you're the best leader in the world and you've got all the skills to be able to do it. And there's a whole lot of different facets to it: having difficult conversations, courageous conversations, coaching as opposed to telling, all of that stuff. Really powerful. So that's and then that helps that person that's in that new role feel like they've got someone to go to. We talked before about finding people around you that can help, but if you're direct, the person that you're reporting to can bring a whole bunch of that stuff as well to you in an open door, and you feel that you can talk to them. That just adds another whole layer, right? Yeah, and I sense that's a big part of the way you lead and why people follow you like they do. Nisha, this has been awesome. But look, just before we finish up, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
I can't think of too much other than I do think when you're moving into a tech role and what is the aspect of becoming a leader, why would you do that? Why would you make that step? Because, why do you go from being a uber senior solution designer or architect and then you want to become a leader? Is there a thing that you should be mindful of that would tell you whether that's the right thing for you to be doing or not? I think that's something that you have to think about. If you move into a leadership role and you still want to have your hands deep into the technical side of things, then you really need to look at it. No matter how much training or development you get, if you still can't get yourself out of the doing, then that's a question that you need to internalize to say, is this really something that I want to do? Because it's okay. And I think the other thing is there's an expectation that the next step is becoming a leader for some reason in our industry. You become a developer, a senior developer, a team leader, a manager, and a CIO. And it's like, really? There are lots of other different career paths, I think, that you can take. And leadership is not a natural evolution of where you are from a seniority perspective. And I think that comes to play as well. So for me, the pitfall is my only next opportunity is to be a manager or a leader. It's actually not. There's lots of lovely things that you can do out there that would tend to make you excited about doing your job.
Yeah, well, that's really powerful, because one of the biggest challenges I see is, and I think it's part of the way we have our organisation set up, is that the natural path to status and financial growth is by moving into leadership and management and not carrying on down a technical path. And if you're not suited to being a leader, and if your organisation focuses on that path of moving into leadership and anyone else that doesn't have the status and the recognition, then that's a real problem, because most people aren't set up to be leaders, or may find that even if they think they are, they're not. It creates all sorts of problems for them. So it's a really good thing to think about, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What's the right thing for you? And as a leader, finding the right person or the right people to and it may not be the person you're thinking. It's certainly not always the extrovert. And often, in our case, perhaps it's the introverts that are, don't overlook someone just because they're the quieter one. They may make a better leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Nisha, that's been awesome. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Incredible amount of insight and ideas in there that people can take away and act upon. So thank you. It's been great having you on the show, and hope to have you on the show again someday.
You're welcome. And it was awesome being able to contribute and share some stories. So thank you.
You're welcome. All right, take care. See you next time. Thanks for listening. If you have a friend or a colleague who would benefit from this episode, please pass the word along. If you have a friend or a colleague who would not benefit, but you haven't been in touch with them for a while, give them a call. iTunes reviews are great to get the word out and to help me create the show that's most useful for you. And if you're frustrated or having challenges or would like some help, guidance, assistance with your first leadership role, then check out integrationcatalyst.com in the link in the podcast notes below. Or pass this on to your boss to nudge them to get you the help you really need to cross the doing to managing chasm and get you powered up on your leadership and management journey. Oh, and if you want to make sure you don't miss an episode, hit subscribe. Until next time.